Well, thank you. Well, it's great to be back in Palm Beach County, and I want to thank Palm Beach State College for hosting us. I think the last time, we went when they did open the SoFi Center, we went to one of those events there, which is really cool what they've been able to do here. And so I want to thank President Parker for having us here. We're also joined by Mike Caruso, who's now a county-wide office holder. So if you guys don't know him, clerk of court. And then we got the Attorney General of Florida, James Uthmeier, is here. So we have an announcement that both the Attorney General and I will talk about. But before I get into that, I do want to make another announcement. So I think, as most people know, we had a terrible thing happen in St. Lucie County where you had an illegal alien who was driving this big tractor truck and decided to try to do a U-turn where they have the official use only. Those are little gaps in the highway for highway patrol and law enforcement, and it was obviously a total disaster to even try that. You had a car coming that ran into it, and 3 Floridians were killed. This was somebody that was issued that CDL actually in 2 different states, Washington State and in California, and should have never obviously been behind the wheel. Doesn't even speak English. You gotta, if you want to drive, you gotta know the road signs and stuff, and it's just the reality. So it was a really horrible thing. At the time, there was not any eyewitnesses. He didn't speak English, so they got all the facts they could. But then when they got the videotape, they saw. So immediately he fled to California, obviously sanctuary state. He was able to be detained in California, and so today I'm sending Florida's new Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins to California, and tomorrow morning he is going to take possession of this illegal alien, extradite him back to the state of Florida, and we're going to throw the book at him when he gets back here for what he did. So you can count on that. Now, we are here to discuss something that both the Attorney General and I are going to be pursuing in conjunction, hopefully, with the Trump administration, and that involves the count of Florida in the most recent census. I think most people know we were undercounted in that census. In fact, I remember when the first Trump administration was leaving office in January of 2021, I spoke with people at the Commerce Department, and they said Florida's going to get 2 additional seats in Congress as a result of that census, which was basically the 2010 through 2020 population growth. It turns out, new administration takes office, we end up getting 1 seat, state of Florida. Oregon got 1. I think Colorado, it's like we got the same as Oregon over that period of time. And even the Biden administration a couple years later said that there was undercount in Florida, that Florida should have gotten at least 1 more seat in Congress, and that some of these other states, and look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but every state that got shortchanged was a Republican state, and every state that got more was a Democrat state. That's just the truth about how that census was applied. So, you think about it, and I know there's different issues involving the census even apart from that, but the census that was done, and it started under Trump administration, but it was processed and the results were promulgated under Biden. Just with that, if we just take that and applied it properly, Florida would have at least 1 more seat. That's just the truth. So the Attorney General has written a letter to the Census Bureau, the Commerce Department, copying the White House, saying, please fix this remuneration and award Florida what we're entitled to, an extra seat in Congress. And if we get that, that's not only an extra seat in the House of Representatives, we have 28 now, that would also mean an additional vote in the Electoral College when it comes to presidential elections. And so we should have had that in 2024 and 22 for Congress, 24 for both Congress and the Electoral College, and we want this fixed now. We think it's really something that's important. So if that relief is given, then that would obviously force the Florida legislature to have to redraw the maps that we have for U.S. House of Representatives, because we have 28 districts currently. We would presumably have 29. I've had some people tell me they think we'd have 30, but I think 29. So you would have to do that. But that would need to be done, likely within the next 3 to 6 months, so that we have enough time to be able to get that done. But we are going to press this issue. Attorney General told me he's going to be willing to go up to Washington and talk to people in the Commerce Department to be able to get this right. I know President Trump has spoken about the need to fix the problems with the census. And let me also say that there's the issue, which I think is important, about, okay, you count people, and then you've got people, especially in like California, who are illegally in the country. Should you be rewarded for that and more seats in Congress because you're a sanctuary jurisdiction? I don't think so. I don't think it's right. So, you count who's ever present, but then when you do congressional apportionment, that should be based on people who are lawfully present in the country. And then if you did that, that would also necessitate different results than what we've had in recent years. And so we're totally supportive of dealing with the issue of not having illegal aliens counted for the purpose of apportionment. That benefits California, it benefits Illinois, New York in ways that it really shouldn't, but that's how it's been done. So we're definitely supportive of that. But you don't even need to do that to give us the extra seat that we should have had starting in the 2022 election. So that's the first thing, and we're going to keep on this. We're going to work with Commerce. I had spoken with folks back in the day when this happened. I was like, can we sue over this? And they're like, well, we don't really, how do you get in? And we didn't know what the basis would be. We knew we were entitled, but you got to prove it. You got to have the legal theory, all this stuff. And we were not going to get any help at the time, of course, from the Biden administration. Well, now Biden administration has since had to acknowledge that there was an undercount. And I know the Trump administration is of the same mind. So we're in a position now where I think we may be able to get positive relief. The other issue that is going to be significant, that's going to have a bearing on Florida's congressional districts, is the idea of race-based districts. So the U.S. Supreme Court has accepted a case. It's going to be argued in October, basically asking the question about whether is it appropriate to use race when you're drawing districts. So the current iteration of the Voting Rights Act has been interpreted to mean that if you have a majority-minority district, that district has to be kept into a similar configuration such that the majority can elect a candidate of their choice, which basically, it doesn't necessarily mean, if that district elected a Republican, they would say that that's a bad district. It basically means that district has to elect a Democrat. That's the way this has been interpreted over the years. We have at least one in our congressional map that is configured strangely to be able to comply with that interpretation of the Voting Rights Act. People are now bringing a challenge saying, Voting Rights Act means you show up to vote. If you're a lawful citizen, you get to vote. They can't play games with you. They can't make one person go in with nothing, and then someone, because they're a different color, have to be able to recite the Odyssey from memory. Otherwise, they fail the literacy test. All that stuff is done. That is not something that's appropriate, but that's an individual's voter's right to go in and cast a vote if you're a citizen of this country, and that obviously should apply regardless of race. But are we saying that you have to draw these strange districts to be able to manufacture a certain number of folks of certain race or not race in one district? That is using race to draw the districts in ways that I think some people, I do, interpret the 14th Amendment to not allow. So that is going to be a huge issue in front of the Supreme Court. I think because they're hearing it this early in the session, that they likely are going to render a decision on this perhaps by the end of the year, the beginning of next year. Our primary is a year away. So we have time to be able to digest those changes. But if that decision were to come down and to say that those districts are problematic, Florida would be forced with that as well, even if we didn't get the extra seat, to go in and do a new map. And as you remember, well, some may remember, I had to veto the Florida Republican legislature. I had to veto their map last time because they drew this 200-mile district from Tallahassee to Jacksonville, this little squiggly district across the northern tip of Florida, and it was purely to manufacture a certain racial composition. It was not a VRA district, though. This was them doing that apart from that. And I said, that's not constitutional. Like, regardless, however you think the VRA should be interpreted, if it's a VRA district, federal law, fine, you deal with that. But this was not. No one was even claiming it was. And so I said, I'm not going to sign that. And we vetoed the map. We had to fight them on other stuff, but we got a map in. And it ended up going to federal court and the Florida Supreme Court. And it's been upheld every time people have sued over it because we knew we were right. But that was a really important decision to be able to do that. So we've done that. Here, this could be something that would require us to do even more. And we're going to be ready and willing and able to do it. Now, apart from what happens with the Commerce Department and the Census Bureau, apart from what happens with the U.S. Supreme Court and how they interpret Section 2 of the VRA, we do have a situation in Florida where, based on the recent Florida Supreme Court decision, there may be things in the map that we are going to have to, well, the legislature would have to address. We're going through it. I know people are looking at it, but there's definitely some decisions that were made by the legislature last time, particularly in southern Florida, that may not comport with the court's recent decision upholding the northern part of Florida with the part of the map that was challenged. So that obviously is a basis to go in and do this thing fresh. And the other thing I would point out is, if you look at when this census was completed, the counting, I think, stopped in April of 2020. I mean, just think about what it was like in Palm Beach then compared to now. I mean, like, you've had Florida has been the place where people have escaped to from all, and just keep in mind, I'm not recruiting people to move here. I'm not, some governors will go around the country, please move to our state, please. I'm not doing that because honestly, we've got a lot of people. We've got great people. I figured out, like, during COVID, like, I didn't need to go on these trips to recruit, businesses from New York. They were calling me, asking me to come down. Like, you guys can come if you want. It was fine. So I'm not one of those guys that's like begging people, to move here at all. Because I understand, like, look, there's some benefits to that. I mean, some of the people have moved in this area, have good income. They don't really use services. They contribute and all that stuff. So I'm not saying it's bad, but there obviously is challenges with traffic. There's challenges with building new schools and all this stuff. So the bottom line is, we just try to do a good job. People can vote with their feet how they want to. And the reality is, since that April of 2020, Florida has been the #1 state that people have sought to move to in the entire United States of America. And so when I got elected governor, I think we had about 21 million people. Now we're almost 23.5 million people in the state of Florida. But our current congressional districts are reflective of that reality from 2019, the beginning of 2020. So you have some districts that have not reflected the population change that's happened. So some districts you have a lot of votes, some you don't have as much votes. And so that is another basis to go back in and look and say, okay, we want equal representation. These districts should be the same. A congressman in some parts of Florida can get elected with like a fraction of the votes that some of these congressmen, are getting 250,000 votes. Some of the others are getting like less than 200,000 votes. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's odd when you have that. And it's not just, there's overall way more votes in some districts than the others. So we've seen that. And part of it is because what's happened in Florida has really been unprecedented. We've had really significant growth and migration, and our congressional map should reflect that. So this is something that we are going to have to address as a state. I've spoken with some folks in the Florida legislature, and I think that there's broad acknowledgement that this is something that is going to have to happen. We do have some things that will happen between now and the spring that will inform exactly how we're supposed to do this, particularly if we get another seat or if the Supreme Court says that the racial-based districts are unconstitutional, that we would have no choice as a state but to go in and do a new congressional map. But this is something that's kind of stuck in my craw for a number of years, because I remember telling everybody we were going to get 2 seats at the last census. And then when they came out with it, we only got 1. And I was looking around and I'm like, they told me Rhode Island was going to lose a seat and we were going to get 2. And then Biden comes in. Who's the Commerce Secretary overseeing the census? Former governor of Rhode Island. Did Rhode Island lose a seat? No. Did Florida get 2? No, we only got 1. So there's all these questions. And so I've been frustrated with it. We were not going to get anywhere, I think, under the Biden administration. And I know the president has personally spoken about the need to get the census right. So we have an opportunity to do that and to basically give Floridians what they're entitled to, which is fair representation. So I want to thank the Attorney General for taking the lead on this and working with the Trump administration. This is time sensitive, though. I mean, Florida, we have more time than most because our primary is not for about a year away. And we have filing that probably can get pushed to June for Congressional if we need to, like the state offices. So we do have some time, but certainly if they're going to go back and fix the census, I mean, that would be something that they would need to act on as soon as possible. So hopefully Florida can play a role in getting this right, not just for the people of our state, but for the United States. James?
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's clear that there's been, for a long time now, a deep state effort to manipulate the census and shift electoral power to blue states, to sanctuary states. And as you see, a lot of Democrat leaders engaging in hysteria over the deportation of people that are here illegally, many of these people, who have committed very heinous crimes, it's clear that they are freaking out because they realize the jig is up. They had a deep-seated plan. They wanted to open the border, flood these people in, spread them into sanctuary communities, and ultimately get great or disproportionate electoral power because of it. And think about it. Somebody that is not here as a lawful citizen doesn't have the right to vote. Yet on election night, when the Electoral College, the electoral votes are distributed, states like California do disproportionately well. It's estimated, and we don't know the total number of people here in this country illegally, but it's estimated that at least 20 to 30 congressional seats, electoral votes, perhaps would shift if we were truly apportioning based on lawful U.S. citizens. So we applaud President Trump and the administration for recognizing this problem, this challenge to our Constitution, this challenge to true electoral representation in this country. We're certainly going to do everything we can to help them get it right. Now, as the governor said, we in Florida, we have our own exacerbated problem. And I saw it happen firsthand. I was appointed to be a senior advisor to the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, a local resident here, in the first administration, and the Commerce Department oversees the Census Bureau. So as the tabulations were beginning, as the numbers were coming in, it was always projected Florida would get 2 seats. That's certainly what I thought was going to happen, maybe even 3, given the population growth we were seeing even before COVID and the rise of the Free State. And yet, sure enough, Biden administration comes in, there are significant delays, there are problems, and it ultimately comes out Florida only gets 1 seat. Since then, in after-action reports, the Census Bureau has publicly admitted that they believe Florida was undercounted by an estimate of at least 700,000 people. We only needed, according to the earlier data, we only needed about 100-something thousand to get that extra seat. So the Census Bureau themselves, the very bureaucrats that cause these problems, have admitted that Florida should have had more representation. Florida citizens deserve the adequate representation in Congress. They deserve the adequate representation in the Electoral College that makes such important decisions for the leadership of our country. Florida citizens deserve the fair and adequate federal funding to come to this state and ensure that we have the resources needed to meet the needs of our population. So the Office of Attorney General will certainly be pursuing any remedy necessary to fix this problem. Obviously, we'd love to do it before the midterms next year, before voters go and vote. And we otherwise look forward to working with the Trump administration on fixing a larger midterm census to get it right for the country and our citizens. You guys deserve it. So we'll be fighting the good fight. I'll be helping the governor in this regard, and look forward to hopefully seeing some good results. Thank you.
You know, one thing that's important to point out is Florida, you know, I vetoed the map last time. It did have unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. We did a map, and, you know, people were howling about it because the reality is, we did it on constitutional grounds, but they didn't like the fact that that gerrymandered district would have likely been a Democrat, and then that was taken away. And so they were crying foul on that. Florida's map has compact districts. It's one of the most compact maps in the country. The legislature is not allowed to draw the Illinois-style snake districts, which are a joke. They're not allowed to do that. So the map that Florida has compact districts. It's done in a way that makes a lot of sense. And the reality is if you look at like California, you know, they're doing all this dog and pony show there now, saying, oh, Texas, we've got to combat Texas. California is one of the worst gerrymandered maps there is. You know, what they did, this is how they do. They're like, no, we're going to do an independent commission. So they do a commission. The problem is, it's like, if you truly were independent, it's like you would be immune to any type of partisan pressures. But that commission is comprised of liberal Democrats, liberal independents, and very liberal Republicans. I think one of the Republicans is from Berkeley, like not exactly a hotbed of Reagan conservatism. It's just, it is what it is. So they hotwired that independent commission to produce a map that was very much gerrymandered and was not something that was fair to Republicans, even at that time. Now they're saying they want to do even more by doing whatever they're talking about doing now. So don't buy this notion that if someone has a commission, that somehow means it is immune from this type of partisan pressures. The California one was a left-wing commission. That's just the reality. That's what they produced. That's what they were supposed to do based on who appointed those folks to that commission. And so I just think it's better to just have the legislature do it. And if you don't like it, you know, you can vote them out. You put some commission in, like California, and then stack it. If you don't like that as a voter, those people will never appear on your ballot. But that's exactly what they did there. And they've done it in other states as well. And then Illinois, if you look at Illinois, you know, so Illinois, like if Chicago wasn't in Illinois, it would be a red state. You know, there's some dots blue, but like most of it is red outside of Illinois. So if you drew compact districts, you know, you'd have probably 6 in the Chicago that would be like 90-10 Dem, right? But then all the other ones would probably be Republican districts, and they didn't want that. So what they do is they go into the city of Chicago, they find enough Dems, and they draw a map out to the burbs and the rural to do that, so they know a Dem can win. Then they go to the next part of the city. They draw it out with the rural and all that. So just look up their map on Google Maps and Google Image, and it'll come up, and you can see it. And it's a joke. And I just find it funny that Texas, whatever they're, you know, I don't know what the status is. I know they were trying. These Democrats flee. And, you know, and a lot of the media is like acting like Texas is like so out of bounds. I never heard anything about Illinois. Like it was almost like they didn't care about Illinois. You even have the governor of Illinois. He's sheltering these Texas Democrats who are fleeing. First of all, you should be there doing your job, not running and hiding. But they're fleeing to Illinois to protest gerrymandering. You're going to Illinois to protest gerrymandering? I mean, it's just ridiculous. So Florida, you know, what we did, you know, we were attacked at the time. You know, the reality is people can pull up, you know, that map and see, you know, how it was done. So this is going to be something, you know, we are going to have to address this in one form or another. We will do that. But I do think that there's going to be things that are going to happen throughout the balance of this year and the beginning of next year. Maybe get a tweak to the census, Supreme Court rule on racial gerrymandering. And then, obviously, we've got the basis that we're looking through based on the Florida Supreme Court's decision about if there are any vulnerabilities on our current map, and then just accounting for the reality that Florida has had a big population shift, and it hasn't been uniform throughout the state. You know, Broward, I don't think they've had net population gain. You have some other places. I mean, Palm Beach has had net gain. You've had other parts of the state definitely net gain. But there's some that boomed, some that were, you know, fine. No one did bad. This guy, he abysmally failed the English test, like not even close, like not even broken English. Like this guy did not know English, and yet somehow he was given a CDL by Washington and a CDL by the state of California, and that should not have happened. That is wrong that happened. So you have a real serious issue and a breakdown here, but I would say part of the problem, and I mentioned this yesterday, this guy came from India, right? He comes through the southern border illegally. He gets caught and he claims asylum. That is not what asylum is for. First of all, if he was really being persecuted in India, how many countries did he pass through where he could have claimed this? You don't just get to come halfway around the world and use that as a card to get it. So then he claims asylum, but we have this totally screwy system where he's then given a court date, then it's postponed, then this. So it's like if you come illegally and you give a bogus asylum claim under how the law's been applied, at least up until President Trump took office in January, you're basically giving yourself years in this country. That is not a disincentive to come illegally. That's not a disincentive not to overstay visa. That's not so you had that was going on, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, well, wait a minute. We all know this is a problem. You can't have a situation in which a President Biden can open the border, millions and millions come in, and then a President Trump's trying to rectify that. And it's basically you got to jump through like 36 different bureaucratic hula hoops just to be able to return somebody to their home country. So it's kind of heads they win, tails we lose, the way it's set up right now. And so my question is, we have a Republican Congress. All these guys, I've watched them for years. They all run, and when they're running for election, oh, I'm so tough on border immigration, no illegal, all that. Then they get in there, and what do they do about it? Have they passed legislation? Have they sought legislation to clean up the mess? Have they passed legislation to be able to get this done so that we don't have these problems? No. They've been in for how many months? They haven't even attempted it that I've seen. What about sanctuary states? Now, we're not a sanctuary state in Florida. We banned sanctuary cities my first year. We've got very strong policies, and it's honestly, it benefits citizens in Florida to have those strong policies. But why are they still funding sanctuary states? Why are they still funding sanctuary cities? Why doesn't Congress use the power of the purse and say, your funding is contingent upon following federal law with respect to immigration? You can't be a sanctuary jurisdiction. You can't, California, they've probably done 1 million driver's licenses to illegal aliens in the past decade. Now, Florida law, we don't recognize that license in Florida. We don't issue driver's license for people who are here illegally. We don't let local governments do ID cards because, some of the local governments would want to get involved in that. We ban that. We don't even let the NGOs do it because we know they're trying to generate a system where people can get benefits, vote, whatever, when they're not entitled to it. So we've done it right. But how is it that these sanctuary jurisdictions are able to get away with it? And I think they get away with it because Congress, they're basically on the sidelines. It's like they just kind of sit in the cheap seats and watch everything unfold without actually using their constitutional authority to fix these problems. So this was avoidable. This should have never happened. There were obviously major screw-ups by Washington State and California. Well, I shouldn't even say that because I think that's their policy to be able to do that. So those are misguided policies. But the bureaucratic morass that happens when somebody will come in and claim asylum, really is a farce.
Governor Singh, I'll give the Sun Sentinel. This builds off the question that was already asked.
I'm not sure. I didn't draw the current map. I don't know whose district is whose. And quite frankly, even though I wasn't involved in drawing it, I said I was going to veto the one and that we had to do another. The guys that do draw the maps, they don't do it based on who the incumbent is. They basically do it based on, what makes sense in terms of geographic. So, we had some incumbents that were complaining last time, and they were like, oh, you're trying to go after this. No, no one was gone after. It had no impact on anything. Now, I will say, clearly, if the VRA is found to be, the application of the VRA is found to be unconstitutional of the race-based district, that district here will definitely change. So that we will be mandated to do it. And my sense is that would probably have spillover effects for a lot of places in southern Florida. I think if you look at the map now, probably north of I-4, I think is a pretty sound map. I don't think that there's really any basis. I think as you get into central, but particularly southeast Florida, there starts to become questions, voting VRA questions, but also some lingering questions from the first round of maps that the Florida Supreme Court has now been able to opine on that you could potentially look to see. And then I think if there are any changes made, one of the things that these guys are going to have to look at is, because you can draw a line in this part of the town or that part of, at some point you got to make decisions. And I think those decisions should be informed by the population changes and how all that's happened so that people get as fair and as equal of representation as possible. But if you have to change one, then there's going to be a lot of other districts that could potentially be implicated. But I don't know if there's a constitutional defect with Moskowitz. I don't know there. I know we have, I think, 2 VRA districts. Is it 2? Do you know, or is it just with the one?
It's at least 2.
Okay, at least 2. I think one of them is pretty compact, so I don't know that that would necessarily be a problem per se, as long as there was a non-racial justification for it. I do think the one here in Palm Beach that has the arms that kind of go out and try to snag more voters that way, I think that's got some problems. And I think almost certainly if the VRA is interpreted to say that you can't use race in that way, then that district will have to be redrawn 100%. So that's a good question. How endemic is this problem about not being able to speak English and then getting a CDL? I can tell you in Florida, you have to speak English. So anyone that is able to obtain a CDL without doing that is getting it unlawfully. We require that. I think most states do. I think probably federal law requires them to be able to do it. So I don't know the answer to your question writ large overall. I know for us, we've been very clear, you have to do it. We're also making sure, like, hey, is there anything more we need to do to make sure that that's honored? My sense is it's been honored in Florida, but clearly this guy would not have passed the test in Washington or California based on the test that was just done on him by the federal immigration officials. It would not have happened. So he clearly never demonstrated proficiency in English. And, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this when you're driving on the road. I mean, we put our own citizens through just to be able to get a normal driver's license. You got to know what you're doing. And, look, Florida, we got enough problem with some of our drivers. I mean, it's like, let's just be honest here. Do we really need to have more? We really want people who are not eligible to be in this country, don't speak English, trying to maneuver a tractor trailer like this? Like, no, I don't think that that's the right thing to do. So we're going to look more deeply into what happened in Washington State, what happened in California, because I would imagine, I don't think, well, knowing those states, you never know. But I think it would be hard for them to actually put on paper, you don't have to speak English to drive these heavy vehicles in the United States. I think it would be hard for them to get away with that. And I don't know that they've actually put that on paper. If they did, that's a huge scandal. But if they say you have to do English and then just aren't enforcing it, that's another problem too. And I think there should be accountability for it. And I said, as soon as we got, the facts on this, which, I know the video came out, I think over the weekend or Friday or something. And I commented on Monday because I wanted to get as much facts as I could. I didn't want to just pop off. I wanted to know what we were dealing with. But I said, we're going to hold this guy accountable, 100% criminal charges, and he's going to be in prison for a long time. But we also got to look at the company. How is he doing? The company put him in there. Did the company not look to see whether he could speak English? I mean, how do you hire somebody? Hey, you know, how are you going to drive that? No English? Like, no, you have got to speak English. And there had to be a process where you were able to say, and this guy didn't speak English. So that's a huge problem with the company. So we're looking through that and seeing. And then we're also looking at the conduct of these other states to see, you know, what recourse there's. It's harder when you're talking about other states. It just is, legally and constitutionally. But, you know, how is it fair that, like Florida, we're doing the right thing? We've enacted the safe policies. We've enacted policies to discourage illegal immigration, not to encourage it. California does the opposite. Washington State, sanctuary state, they are inviting people to come illegally to their state. And, you know, you can say, well, that's the policies they've chosen, but those policies spill over to our states. And that's the problem, I think, that you have. And that's why I think Congress, they need to get with the program here, and they need to start enacting some policies to protect states like Florida from the excesses of the sanctuary states throughout these United States. Okay, thanks, everybody. God bless.